We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast, where we're listening to the smooth sounds of jazz. All right. Oh, man, it has been a hot week, man. I've been out. I swear, I feel like I'm Mexican. You know, we've had all these discussions about illegal immigrants mowing our lawns and weed whacking and cleaning our toilets and all this stuff. And I feel like I am being undervalued because I am doing this shit myself. My weed whacker broke down, so I had to go to Home Depot, and I was jamming out in the car with my mom on the way there because she needed to get some things, and I got a brand new Ryobi weed whacker that fits my battery system. Went home, and, like, because of the rain, you know, every Saturday we get all this rain for the last, 6, 7, 8 weeks now. I watch my grass sprout up 6 inches every weekend. On the one day that I have time to actually get to it, I can't get to it because it's fucking raining. So then, now I finally get a weekend where it's nice and hot and I can get stuff done. I get my brand new weed whacker, and I'm out there, and I'm like, oh man, got my cervezas, got my tacos, got my carne asada, and I'm out in the yard, and I'm out there chopping shit down. I did an acre and a half of my property with the weed whacker, and then I got a little leaf blower too, so I went around leaf blowing all the stuff down. I'm like, all right, damn. I can survive pretty well without my own illegal. Go figure. Maybe the United States might be able to survive pretty well without illegals too. You know, maybe, the arguments that we make for illegal immigration, we could just make for, normal shit, for normal people to do their own stuff. Yeah, we talked about that last week, how the elites always talk about who's going to clean your toilets. I'm like, you're the one living in a fucking mansion. I clean my toilets. I mow my lawn. I weed whack my own shit. I take my own trash out. I clean my own house. I'm like, and I got 3 kids and they clean up their messes. So I'm like, I don't know. I've always survived pretty well without an illegal cleaning my toilets. I wouldn't even know what that's like. But hey, it is what it is. Again, in studio with me, I have Mike and Andy from Citizens Doge, who just listened to me go on a ridiculous rant about illegal immigration. They're going to be here to give us the Doge report and pontificate on the current events of today's random griftery bullshit that happens to come up online and in the pundit media. So let's give me that Doge report, baby.
Well, you bet, Julian. Thank you again for having us, and I concur with most of what you said. And it's been a hot summer. It's good to get out in the yard and get stuff done on your own. This week's sponsors for the Citizens Doge Report are the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast, Loveland Realty, and 7K Metals. Loveland Realty is a Patriot-owned small real estate firm that cares about its clients and takes care of them. If you're in the market for a new residence and you want to work with someone who shares your values, please reach out to David or visit the Loveland Realty offices at 20 Foundry Street in Concord. And we also want to give an update on the other sponsor, 7K Metals. We have recently partnered with 7K Metals. This is big. Our community now has access to wholesale gold and silver pricing. As we all know, inflation is crushing the dollar. The good news is we don't have to sit back and lose the value of our hard-earned savings. Take control, protect your wealth. Visit 7kmetals.com/citizensgold. That's our link. And start stacking with purpose today. Gold and silver keep breaking records, and it's not stopping. Get it now before you're priced out. But just briefly, in events recaps, we had a sojourn up to a place that's near and dear to my heart, Weirs Beach. I believe it was last Wednesday evening at the Belknap County GOP meeting. Scott Brown was present there, as well as someone who is, I think, becoming a friend of ours, Belknap County Chair Paul Lang. Good conversation, matters related to the lake, and we were holding up representation on the younger side of things, but it was a good meeting. The raison d'etre that we are here, the biggest event that Citizens Doge has had thus far, is coming up this Friday evening in Wilton from 6 to 8:30 p.m. That's at 77 Holt Road in Wilton this Friday, July 18th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. It is our volunteer opportunity and training barbecue. It's going to be a great event. There's going to be food, networking, some terrific speakers. I can confirm at this point that we will have a representative from Turning Point Action there among the speakers roster. The others I am under
NDA.
I'm under commitment to keep on the down low for now, but we could have a special announcement among the other speakers who are attending. So just something to look forward to for attendees. But we want to ask of everyone who comes, please come to make connections with like-minded people and leave with a commitment to take action in your city or town or neighborhood before the summer is through. Whether you're interested in volunteering or being part of our Town Captains program, we will provide you with the information that you need. We know we're in the quiet part of the political season now, but we see this as an opportunity to strike and get ahead of the game before other people kind of join in when the fall comes around. So if you want to make a difference in your local town, and if you want to come enjoy the festivities and be around like-minded people, but leave with a purpose, please come to 77 Holt Road in Wilton this Friday, July 18th, for our volunteer opportunity barbecue from 6 to 8:30 p.m. We encourage everybody to come. If we don't take action and make a difference in our local communities, who will? And just two brief final mentions as I wind down. We have representation tonight or this evening at the Sullivan County GOP meeting through our friend Annette Menard, who is our Sullivan County lead. At the moment, we want to give her a shout out for representing us there. We also plan to attend the Cheshire County Republican Committee's meeting, which I understand will be upcoming a week from this Saturday on the 26th of July. As always, our name is Citizens Doge. You can find us at www.citizensdoge.com. Pretty straightforward. Our email is citizensdoge@gmail.com. We are on most of the major social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and X. Our X handle is @CitizensDogeUSA. And my understanding is we may be on Instagram soon as well. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
And
don't forget to mention tonight's event that we're hopping to after this.
Oh, yes. What?
Yeah, I can mention that. So tonight we got an event that we're hopping to right after this podcast here. It's going to be at Fulcino's Vineyard in Hollis, New Hampshire. That's Fulcino's Vineyard, Hollis, New Hampshire, at 6 p.m. Guest speaker Scott Brown will be there, as well as the Hollis GOP. They're hosting the event.
Nice. Yeah, Al Fulcino is a good guy. Great wine, too.
Great guy.
Great wine, but also fantastic guy, big supporter of the GOP, especially the grassroots GOP. He's been a massive supporter of getting out on the ground and, unconventional candidates. Not the ominous dominus. You're the new guy this week. You're the next guy up type of thing. He's a good supporter of the average guy running for office and trying to make a difference. So get out there to Al Fulcino at Fulcino Vineyards over there in Hollis and support. Get active, because if you're not getting active locally, you're not protecting and maintaining the republic. So, what else you guys got going on? How's your week been? Give us the progress update. How many people are jumping on the bandwagon and ready to fight? Yeah. Are people energized?
Yeah, people are energized. Now that people see that the political season's around the corner, candidates are announcing, I think more excitement's building up. So I mean, I've been getting calls left and right. We had someone from Tennessee even reach out to us, which is pretty amazing. We've had a good selection of people in Massachusetts that have reached out to us. So talking about like spreading the brand as Citizens Doge has been interesting, and we're looking to do that in the near future. But as far as locally, yeah, I mean, I'm getting calls from all kinds of groups in the state. YAL just reached out. Political Action Fund just reached out to me as well. So there's all kinds of incoming stuff. I don't even have time to tell you everything, Andy, because it's been, I'm just working connections.
He gets the calls.
Yeah, they're calling me, and then I'm trying to filter what we can and can't do. So, yeah, it's been really good just trying to partner with different groups. And so next Friday, what Andy mentioned in the Doge report here is going to be a great meeting to get everybody, like-minded people on board, bring people together. Our job is coalesce the grassroots. So that was the point of our group initially, having all these different groups, and we're like a point group to spread messages out. So we'll have great speakers. People will tell us what they're working on, and we can filter it to our volunteers.
All right. I absolutely love that. Again, big supporter of you guys' work, especially the concept of getting involved in changing how we do things, because we, each one of these groups that exist in the state within the grassroots all have their own little niche, and we need to come together around a common goal of actually getting people elected and being able to pass legislation and get things done in the right order, and also getting a lot of people to run for local office, because if you don't maintain the shit that happens in your backyard. So like a couple weeks ago we were talking about coming to New Hampshire from Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, Maine, all that stuff, and not massing up New Hampshire, not bringing your baggage from there here, learning what New Hampshire is about when you come here and becoming a part of the family, right?
Yep.
That live free or die spirit. And I got a lot of backlash. So on TikTok, we went I think we're going on 12,000 views right now, and a lot of comments, people going, because I made a comment about how we have no taxes. And everyone goes, but what about property taxes? And I'm sitting here going, newsflash, people, property taxes are a local issue by and large. Those are your police department, your fire department, your school budget is the largest part of your property taxes in New Hampshire. And the GOP has led the state legislature for 3-4 election cycles now, and we have continued to push money back to the towns so that they can compensate and lower people's property taxes. But what happens at the town level where people aren't as involved? They spend it. They spend more money than they get back from the state. So every time they get money, they spend exponentially more than they should be spending, which is why we continuously find ourselves in this position of, wow, no matter what we do, my property taxes are going through the roof. And I'm sitting here going, you're not activated locally, so stop complaining. Either get active, go to your school board meetings, and start to rein in these damn budgets, or shut up.
Exactly, and that's kind of what we're attempting to do, is this call to action, get people involved instead of complaining, sitting on the couch. How do we control these things? And then what you just said about the property tax, I mean, yeah, it is high in New Hampshire, but Massachusetts, it's not a lower property tax. It's still through the roof as well. I mean,
yeah.
And then you have your sales tax and income tax as well. So people come here to escape the crazy taxes. I mean, yeah, property tax is high, and we're part of Citizens Doge. We're getting people activated locally to help bring down and cut some spending, but you can't just complain about that one thing. I mean, that's still better than where you came from.
You know who's complaining the most? It's the people who have lived here for forever.
Yep.
And forget what it's like to get taxed 10 ways till Sunday on top of high property taxes in literally all of New England. And I'm like, you got to remember, the people coming here from Mass are paying high property taxes in Mass on top of income tax, sales tax, and taxes on literally everything else. Same with New York, same with California, same with all of these other states. And I'm sitting there going, if you want low taxes and a low cost of living, you in New England, you come to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And if you want it elsewhere, you go to Tennessee, Florida, Texas. I'm like, that's where you get that conservative mentality of limited government, fiscal responsibility, so on and so forth. But up next, we're going to have to go to a quick break, because up next we're going to have a guest to talk about another judge blocking Trump from cutting Planned Parenthood funding under the big beautiful bill. Leslie Colby. Oh, I'm sorry, Corbley. I'm so messing that up. It's one of those days. I haven't had enough of my coffee yet. Leslie Corbley is going to be coming on next after the break, so tune in. Stay tuned. We'll be with you in a couple minutes. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Acciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Acciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry. That's augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Welcome back to Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. As I said earlier, I have Mike and Andy with Systems Doge here with me in the studio, and we're going to get into some fiery conversation with our upcoming guests about judges blocking Trump's defunding of Planned Parenthood, because, you know, nothing says that you care about women like helping them kill their babies. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. You couldn't fund murder in any other aspect in the federal government, but you sure as hell can when it comes to a baby in the womb who can't, you know, get legal representation. But if you look at the court case that just came down, and if I remember correctly, it had to do with illegal immigrants and birthright citizenship, and what ended up coming out of that was that the Supreme Court actually said that children unborn have rights, which means all children unborn have rights, which means that is murder. Now we have to look at it differently. But so our guest, Leslie Corbley, is going to be coming on. I figured it out. I got it. I'm ready to go. I got a little bit more caffeine with me inside of me during the break. So thank you for coming on, Leslie.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. It's nice to meet you. Tell us about this case.
Sure. So, I mean, I think no shock that Planned Parenthood is pretty desperate and wants to go to judges in order to maintain their funding, since it's clear that they won't be able to maintain their offering their services, or many of their services, if they can't. So essentially, they said the federal government is attempting to single them out by not funding them, and this is apparently legally inappropriate, which is, I think, a reach of an argument, given that the entire purpose of Congress is to fund that which Congress wishes to fund, and there's no obligation for them to fund any specific, agency, entity, or nonprofit over others. And,
I completely agree.
Pregnancy crisis centers, by the way, have been operating without federal funds for many, many years. So the idea that certain organizations won't be able to do quite as well in the marketplace if they don't have federal funding, I think is obviously true. It goes without saying, but there's no obligation for Congress to fund specific organizations.
Yeah, they always use this idea that, oh my God, if you strip away funding, we're not going to be able to give out free birth control and condoms and mammograms and pap smears. And I'm sitting there going, that's not the majority of your budget. That's not the majority of your budget. The majority of your budget is abortions. You could give 2% less abortions and fund all the free condoms you want. You could pop them out at high schools like party favors.
Well, it's funny because they're arguing, that I think this quote in particular is funny, where it says that the group argues it's a naked attempt to leverage the government's spending power to attack and penalize Planned Parenthood and impermissibly single it out for unfavorable treatment, which I would say that essentially is arguing that abortion is quite a bit of their services, right? I mean, that a lot of their services are funded by the federal government. And why is that? There's plenty of nonprofits that aren't federally funded that can continue to engage in their operations. Why not? Why shouldn't they be required to go to the people and get funding from donors, just like every other nonprofit that, wishes to go out and fulfill its mission?
Especially when they have such a deep well of celebrities who support killing babies. I mean, what was that chick from Sex and the City just did a Make Abortion Great Again hat on a cruise? It's funny because all those actresses who played the role of Sex and the City of being girl bosses and not having kids and all that stuff ended up actually becoming their characters and living these self-destructive lifestyles of aborting their babies and not having kids and continuous divorces and stuff like that. And then, the one thing they seem to care about is how often they're able to kill a baby. I was like, I thought you're like 60, 70 years old. I thought your ovaries dried up. What are you even complaining about at this point?
Well, it's a very bizarre, I think it's very bizarre. It's a bizarre argument. It's the left's pet issue. Of course, I mean, Kamala Harris essentially ran on abortion as her entire campaign and lost largely because I don't think most Americans care to fund abortions. I think we're a pretty pro-choice country in a legal sense. That being said, I think most Americans still favor some legal limits, which is very far removed from where the Democratic Party is now, which is frankly very extremist on the issue. But this idea that there's some kind of, obligation for the federal government to fund the nation's largest abortion provider is just extremely bizarre. As if women suddenly can't access reproductive health services through their doctors or other nonprofits or local government aid. All kinds of local government agencies provide access to ultrasounds or other types of reproductive, like access to birth control, for example. This idea that that's all shut down and no one can access that without Planned Parenthood is a really bizarre. This is just a bizarre framing of the issue, because it's just simply not the case.
At this point, I'm actually considering starting a nonprofit called Pop on Parts, and we're going to go out there and give girls free implants and free, BBLs and stuff. And my thing will be make America plastic again. And, I might be able to get federal funding because I'm contributing to the overall sexual advancement of society, and hopefully that will result in more kids being made, because we're not keeping up with replacement rate at this point, which is why apparently we need illegals everywhere. But I think it's is absolutely asinine that the pinnacle of women's health care is killing a baby. It's not mental health. It's where women are using vastly more SSRIs and having depression, anxiety, and a whole slew of suicidal tendencies, alcohol, drug addiction, stuff like that. We're not looking at that. We're looking at how fast and how often can you kill a baby. And it's weird to me that that's what we've decided is the pinnacle of female reproductive health, not actually making sure you can reproduce, but killing your baby specifically.
It's definitely a very violence-based model, but it always has been. The whole left's ethos as it relates to the unborn is basically they're the one group that's an exception that you can dehumanize, you can use violence against them, you can refer them as clumps of cells, you can engage in all of the conduct that they otherwise claim is inappropriate and horrific and evil, but you can do it against this group because it's in the service of women, essentially, right? That's their perception, and that's how they present the issue, right? And if you don't have access to this on demand whenever you want, as often as you want, then you're oppressed, right? And you hate women. That's more or less their argument. I don't think it's particularly compelling. And one of the reasons I don't think it's particularly compelling to most of the public is because I don't think most of the public is tied to this issue ideologically in the same way. I think they look at it more practically, which is why you see a lot of, most people I think have some kind of a limit in their head gestationally when they're thinking about whether it's appropriate to have an abortion legally. Whether they vote that way or not, I think, depends largely on how much they understand legislation. So there's all these public, essentially propaganda campaigns around abortion in particular that I do think favors heavily the left and induces the public to end up voting on referendums heavily favoring abortion, because there's all this fear-mongering tactics, right? That you hate women and, oh my God, look at this horrific story that you support if you don't, vote our way, right? You get a ton of that messaging, and there's the pro-life side has a microphone, fraction of the size of the pro-choice machine, right? So it's really difficult to combat the propaganda on that issue. However, Planned Parenthood itself, I think, is losing broad popular support, I would argue, in real time, not only due to their extreme beliefs on abortion, but because they're now engaged in the trans debate, right? So a lot of this gender-affirming care that they offer, you're seeing a lot of messaging and politics around that as well. So I don't think they're gaining any favors from the public on just how aligned they are with the left, and I think that weakens the argument for continuing to fund them from a public standpoint, right? I don't think the public particularly has any interest in funding ideological behemoths like Planned Parenthood, frankly, whether from the left or the right. But the left has enjoyed federal funding in ways that I think entities on the right could never have gained that kind of access to funding that you have, and it's just baked into, leftists have had an easier time with that, particularly Planned Parenthood. They've been federally funded for years, right? In NPR, you're seeing lots of efforts to defund kind of these ideological power centers that have been on the left for decades upon decades in American life.
Oh, there we go. I'm absolutely loving the idea of defunding Planned Parenthood. I've often said a lot of this I look at as akin to some doctors don't want the patient to get better, because there's profit in the system remaining as broken as it is. And here in New Hampshire, we have an abortion law that we passed back in the 2022 cycle, and essentially all we did was make New Hampshire, which allowed abortion all the way up to the moment of birth with zero restrictions. At that time, we just made New Hampshire in line with Massachusetts, where I believe we allow it up to 24 weeks. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, we allowed it to 24 weeks. Yeah, so 24 weeks, and after 24 weeks with exceptions and restrictions. And it was amazing. They're like, oh my God, you're taking away women's rights. I go, didn't you just say that the vast majority of women get their abortions? Isn't that one of your talking points, that the vast majority of women get their abortions within the first and second trimester, not the third trimester? So why are you so harping on ripping apart a baby in the third trimester at this point? And to a point that you just said, that you previously said, Kamala Harris ran her entire campaign on abortion when it was not even a top 5 issue during the election cycle. And as men across the country are saying, hey, we care about jobs, we care about not getting into World War III, we care about immigration, we care about the cost of living, about our ability to protect and provide for our families, safe communities, the borders, stuff like that. The Democrats are going, no, no, no. Yes, queen, black girl magic, we gotta kill babies. That was their whole thing, was black girl magic and killing babies. And I'm sitting here going, and you wonder why you're losing men's support, and you wonder why you lost the election. This is a main, and I say the same thing for Hillary Clinton. Running on abortion as a main issue is not a main issue for the vast majority of people in the United States. It polls far to the left and young for the vast majority of people, because it just doesn't affect a lot of people's lives when you're worried about putting food on your table, or whether or not you're going to get mugged walking down the street or get your house broken into.
Well, and the reality is that it's an issue where it's a patchwork state approach at this point, and to some degree always has been. And so, the ability to go from state to state in order to facilitate obtaining an abortion isn't particularly difficult. I can't think of any states where it's truly like locked, where you would even have to cross more than one state or one jurisdiction to have the ability to get a surgical abortion. And that doesn't even account for how much of abortion now is happening through pills, right? So mail-order abortion becoming more or less how the vast majority of abortions will likely occur in the coming years. And what I find fascinating, though, from a philosophical and intellectual standpoint, is how I think it is so incredibly hypocritical for the left to talk about domestic violence, for example, without talking about the reality that abortion is going to be a form of domestic violence that occurs within the home on a fairly routine basis. Can you imagine a trauma, for example, if you were 5 to 8 years old and your mom aborted your sibling in your home?
That would scar me.
That.
Yeah,
That's
that would scar me.
We don't talk about abortion as a form of domestic violence, and I think we need to, because that's ultimately what it is. It is a form of familial violence. The violence is primarily committed within the jurisdiction of the home, and it always has been that way, because it's always, that's why there's all these privacy arguments around it, right? We can do what we want in the privacy of the home, but the reality is we don't actually think of the home as having a privacy barrier in that way, right? I mean, you don't think of domestic violence as being something that we resolve in the home.
No.
It's a crime to commit domestic violence in front of a child. It should be a crime if your child witnesses the slaughter of their sibling. What if they see a corpse?
I think you're hitting on a really big issue with how, because you already mentioned how we don't have as large of a microphone as the left. And one of the things that I've been highly critical of our side of the aisle has been in how we message this. Here in New Hampshire, what we did in the last election cycle to take abortion off the table was to proactively message, one, what the bill contained. And that took away the Democrats' armor. So we proactively let women know, hey, this is what the actual legislation that we passed is. We're only in line with Massachusetts. You can do X, Y, Z with your body up until this point. Past this point, it's reasonable to have restrictions. And the other side of this, I think, is we've missed an opportunity when the left is having the conversation about women, even though killing a baby is not supporting women, but where they have the conversation from the woman's perspective, and we're always having the conversation from the baby's perspective, and we end up in this, because the baby can't speak for themselves, we end up in this roundabout argument where we're not actually getting to the core of things. I think a better argument would be, look, I understand what you're going through. I understand that you're faced with a horrible decision right now, and you're worried about your future and being stuck on welfare or not being able to continue your education or losing your career or so on and so forth. in having this baby, but you don't have to be. We have these things called pregnancy life centers over here. We can help you carry your baby to term, still finish your education, get housing, get a job, not be stuck on the dole for the rest of your life, help you with your mental health. And guess what? Side effects, long-term side effects of having an abortion, depression, friggin' drug use, alcohol use, suicidal tendencies, anxiety. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't talk about that if we proactively message that stuff and made the crux of our argument informed consent, like a piece of paper that you would have to sign when you get an abortion that says, these are all of my options, all the organizations that will help me out with my choice and my baby and everything like that. And then there's the one that wants to abort my baby. Then that'll get rid of 83% of abortions based on the last poll that I saw of women. Had they known that there were other options, they would have taken those other options. But we end up in this spiral where the vast majority of women aren't educated as to all of their options when they go to make that decision. And Planned Parenthood has spent a decade, 50 years, making sure that the average woman doesn't know that there are other options. As a matter of fact, they've overtly fought funding of pregnancy life centers and other organizations.
Well, yes, and again, I think that there's a tendency to frame this as an issue primarily around women, and obviously it is because women carry babies, for sure. But I don't think there's a lot of discourse, and in my opinion, it's a big mistake to humanize the cost of abortion to actual children.
Yeah.
Because it's an existential issue. It's an existential crisis for a child if they believe that they have no right to be in the world.
Yeah.
If they believe that they shouldn't have been in the world. If they believe that, if they know that their mother, for example, would have aborted them if it had been legal. Lots of children know that. If they know a sibling of theirs was killed and they aren't allowed a space to grieve that, because to the left, it's like, well, what is there to grieve? This was a human right. And this is a social-wide issue. We don't talk of it in terms of violence, because to speak of it in terms of violence is to imply that women are using violence regularly, which they are.
Yes.
Right? But we don't like that because we see women as victims. So when victims use violence, the left tends to go, how do we call it not violent? Or call it not what it is, because we don't like to put these, what we consider to be historically marginalized classes of people under the microscope, because they've faced a lot of pain. And that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, what you're doing essentially is telling the people who are victimized by that their pain doesn't matter, that you don't care about it, that you don't want them to talk about it, that it shouldn't be seen. And frankly, those are all the same type of things how we used to view domestic violence. Frankly, it's really fairly recently we've been able to have full-fledged conversations about what domestic violence looks like socially. It used to be something that was a privacy of the home. And usually men make very similar arguments, right? You're not going to tell me how to treat my wife. You're not going to tell me what to do in my home. This isn't your business. Go to your jurisdiction of your home and deal with that. Get out of mine. Yeah. It's a very similar mindset, right? You don't have a right to tell me whether or not I'm allowed to be violent in my home. It's like, well, is that the kind of society you want to live in? Do we want to have those cognitive dissonances socially? And I don't think we, again, have that full picture, because children are silenced on this issue, and it's a really difficult issue to contend with.
I'm getting the music. It looks like it's time for our next commercial break. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. So LeslieCorpley.com is the easiest way to find me. I wrote a book, Progressive Prejudice, Exposing the Devouring Mother. So it touches on a lot of these themes and talks about a lot of these social issues and cultural problems. And that's the easiest way to find me, is LeslieCorpley.com.
All right. Go buy that book. Please support her work and protect your local community from Planned Parenthood trying to eradicate the next generation. Up next, we will be discussing the church shooter. Yes, crazy people shooting up churches once again. We'll get into it next. Stay tuned. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Acciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Acciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
Would you rather spend time with family and friends in the pool or at the barbecue rather than landscaping your yard? Well, Augusta Lawn Care is here to help you with all of your landscaping needs. Proudly serving southern New Hampshire, we handle everything. Weekly mowing, spring and fall cleanups, bush trimming, mulch installs, lawn treatments, aeration, dethatching, and even snow plowing and salting when the dreaded winter hits. Call Augusta Lawn Care today and let your yard be the best looking yard on the block. Call 603-331-4768. Augusta Lawn Care, locally owned, professionally done. Call 603-331-4678 or visit us online at augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry. That's augustalawncareservices.com/Londonderry.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Welcome back to Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. We got you on the line. We're going to have our next guest going to be talking about the 3 dead, including the gunman, in Kentucky, the church shooting. You know, the guy who apparently was far right, but apparently was also a Muslim extremist. Nobody can really pin down where he is. Turns out he was just an extremist in general with a lot of issues. Up next is Nils Gravilius. You've seen him previously on our podcast. He's going to dig into exactly what we should be looking at and what we should take away from this case. How you doing, Nils?
I'm fantastic. How are you, son?
I'm having a great day. I got my caffeine. I got my Zen pouch in. I'm like, woo! I'm ready to go.
All right, man. So the last time I was with you, we were discussing Vance Bolter, the man who assassinated the Minnesota politician. We talked a little bit about cannabis psychosis, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't think this man suffered from cannabis psychosis at all. Our church shooter in Kentucky.
The more I'm hearing about him, he seemed to just be all around batshit crazy.
Personality disorder. Let's break down what this man has in common with other mass shooters. He was a mass shooter wanting to do a mass shooting, except he got caught up short. I think the Kentucky State Patrol put some punctuation at the end of his day before he could do everything he wanted to do. Metastatic self-pity added to a unique sense of personal grievance and irrational violence. An aggressive man that everybody knew was aggressive, with prior arrests and prosecutions for aggression. Man was no more Muslim than I am. He had no particular faith in God.
Yep.
I think a man like this worships the mirror, and putting a keffiyeh around his neck and some sort of Islamic prayer hat on his head doesn't make him a Muslim. And you'll notice that the Ummah, which is the worldwide body of the Islamic faithful, they're not stepping into the breach to defend this man. There's a lot of violence in the Islamic world, here and in other countries, but they're not stepping in to defend the violence that he committed, like they often do when there is terrorism or honor killings where young women get murdered by their own family after having been sexually assaulted by somebody else, things like that. I think that this man just loved the attention that he got from pretending to be a Muslim, same way that he enjoyed the attention he got when he called himself a rapper and posed with a Confederate flag next to him. I don't think he believed in the Confederacy either.
As a matter of fact, just as you said that, I just sent the two pictures to Juan. They're in your X account. Go ahead and check those out. See if we can get those up here. It's funny because there's a guy who posted about this, Emery King, online. He had said, and I quote, "I knew Guy personally. A lot of people did. He wasn't a leftist, he wasn't anti-Christian, he wasn't pro-Palestine, he was crazy. If you knew him or even looked at his social media, you'd know that he was all over the place. He had zero ideology, nothing of substance, no foundation, just empty immaturity, performance purity. He was a Whigger criminal with dreams of going viral. He would cling to anything in order to do so. He was the most important person he knew. Yes, he's wearing a Muslim kufi. Yes, he's wearing a keffiyeh. But I'm willing to bet all of my possessions that Guy has never read a page of the Quran, nor could he point out Gaza on a map. He was batshit crazy. Go look at his social media and get back to me. Dude dressed like Ronald McDonald and babbled about literally everything." And I think this hits on the point of what you just said, that this guy really didn't have a particular ideology or anything that would lean him right or left. He just seemed to glom on to whatever was popular at the moment and what could grab eyeballs, a literal, social media shock jock using engagement farming tactics.
I think that's precisely correct, and social media is kind of at the heart of this. I will say again that one of the four horsemen of the millennial apocalypse and Gen Z apocalypse is social media, because a man or a woman can become irrationally aggressive and be rewarded for it on media in a way that she or he would never be rewarded at school, at home, church or synagogue, or anything else. And the rise of official intelligence married to social media is going to create an even bigger. Let me illustrate it for you like this. What if I'm a type who doesn't understand why other people don't like me, And I have a friend in my phone that is a form of AI, and the AI provides the high fives and the click yes and all of the approval and everything else that I couldn't normally get from just having a circle of friends, say on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. What if my AI will tell me all the time that I'm the coolest guy in the world, and my guest host doesn't know anything, that sort of thing? And it changed because I'm getting rewarded for negative acts.
I completely agree. I think our generation is going to leave this legacy on the planet that is wholly destructive, thanks to social media. I've often called it the algorithmic abyss, where you can tune into social media and people who would have been cast out to the children's table, dialogue-wise, now have the ability to seek community online with other batshit crazy extremist people and people with mental health disorders who should be getting help, but social media allows these people to affirm each other and to feel validated in their crazy feelings. And anything you engage with online, the algorithm will feed you 30, 40, 50 times of whatever you engage with. So it creates this self-perpetuating spiral down the toilet where we're all racing to see who's going to be the last skid mark on the bottom of the toilet as the typical social media influencer and pundits buzz around the bottom of the toilet like flies above a pile of shit.
I agree with you. You will also see it in cinema now.
Yes.
I'll give you a great example. There was a movie that came out a few years ago entitled The Joker. The one with...
God, I hate that movie.
Well, I hate it and love it at the same time. I'll tell you why. Because it is the only effective portrayal I have ever seen of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, yes. Yeah, damn. I didn't make the connection.
That is exactly the pathos of Oswald. He slaughtered a war hero Democrat president. He was a Marxist, and he was rewarded by other Marxists in death. Mark Lane wrote a few books about how Oswald couldn't possibly have been the killer. The hard left didn't influence the killer. The hard left is fantastic. Why would they murder a Democrat president? Mark Lane ran for Congress. Mark Lane was a New York legislator. Mark Lane was a lawyer. And then Mark Lane was the last man to see Jim Jones before Jim Jones ordered the execution of Congressman Leo Ryan in Guyana, and then told his followers to drink the Kool-Aid, killing over 1,000 people, including small children. And that's because Mark Lane was Jim Jones' lawyer.
Damn, that is, holy shit. Talk about a turn for the dark right there. I'm not going to lie. I'm a huge comic book fan. And I always liked the Joker because he was the antithesis of everything that Batman was. However, I saw the portrayal of the Joker in that particular movie as the antithesis of everything the Joker was actually was in the comic books. But I also saw it as being this sort of, we've gotten into this realm of worshiping the bad guy rather than admiring the superhero. And I don't mean anti-heroes, because I'm a big fan of like the Punisher, Deadpool, guys like that, who are, rogue agents seeking to correct the evils in the world. But you have these guys, we're outright worshiping the most evil people in the world, and we're lauding them as if they should be humored as a part of adult polite conversation. There's even a trend of people going, Hitler wasn't such a bad guy now on social media. And I don't see this as being largely productive for society. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to be our downfall.
Well, it's intensely destructive. Look at Mamdani. He's a communist. He flirts with all of the vernacular of communism. Yet the mainstream media wants to drive his getaway car because he's sexy and exciting. He's sort of a secular messiah for them. He mouths all of the platitudes about wanting to help people, but so did Pol Pot. So did Vladimir Lenin. When 7 million Ukrainians were starved to death in 1937 in the forced collectivization of their farms, they looked at each other and they said, wait until Comrade Stalin finds out what these local commissars are doing to us. He'll come in and punish them all. And they all starved to death. And believing that.
See, I've often said to the right, we need to be very careful about how we message around these sorts of topics, because the trend online is to talk about how Mondani specifically is a radical Islamist. And I'm sitting there going, no. Communists are communists first. They are Islamists second. Communist Jews are communists first. They're Jewish second. Communist Christians are communists first. They're Christians second. When you're a communist, communism is your identity. It is all consuming. It is everything that you are. Everything else comes second to it, because nothing can be between you and the state. And to the degree that they engage in hyper-racialism, hyper-violent, hyper-religious arguments and stuff, it is all in lieu of class to create this oppressor dynamic so that they can ultimately get their proletariat revolution.
That is correct, and their street troops are the Ku Klux Klan now. The men and women in the Portland tuxedo and the N95 mask.
I love it. I love it when you say that. The Ku Klux Klan is the perfect. It is literally the perfect moniker for this.
I've never heard of that.
Okay, and so for them, communism is what DOS was to Windows 3.1.
Mm-hmm.
You can't run Windows 3.1 without it's their operating system, and that's why everything is so intensely binary. If you're not fighting for the revolution, you're fighting against the revolution, which is why they will kill somebody even seemingly on their own team. They did this during the Spanish Civil War with American communists executing American anarchists for being insufficiently committed to the cause. And that occurred within the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, who used to be worshipped within the pages of the New York Times.
Again, this is Nils Gravilius, Los Angeles-based private detective, a long career and expert in this field. Back to this asshole in Kentucky. Was there any warnings or any threats that law enforcement could have picked up on prior to this? Were there any posts online that people should have taken more notice of, or anything like that that could have led us to prevent this from happening, or maybe take a second look at this guy? Because, I mean, aside of the fact that he's being worshipped much in the case, or that we're seeing this worship of guys like this, like Luigi Mangione, guys like that, is there anything towards these batshit crazy psychos that we should be taking more seriously in regard to how they engage with social media that are triggers or markers that we should pay attention to?
Well, I'd like to draw a line between Mangione and this guy in Kentucky. The man in Kentucky had no particular political bent. Mangione is a communist to the very bone, as you described, and he is intensely rational, Mangione is. If Mangione could have killed 100 like Timmy McVeigh did in 1995, he would have. The left will drive his getaway car and try to call him heroic. They're making Broadway plays about him and making Luigi T-shirts and that sort of thing. The guy in Kentucky is a surly loner whose daily posts on internet, social media, etc., were all aggressive. How do you comb through and decide which one poses the greatest threat? Mm-hmm. He shouldn't have had access to weapons. Clearly, he got somebody to get a weapon for him. My understanding is he was a convicted felon. So, it's not as if the law is insufficient. Mm-hmm. Had he made the threat in advance, like said, I'm going to go over to this church and shoot it up on Sunday, they might have acted. I know in California they won't do anything until there are already dead bodies on the floor.
Yeah.
Kentucky's
Which is
a little
ironic
different.
considering they have red flag laws out there. You would think that they would actually get active prior to bodies being on the floor, but it seems like the laws don't actually stop criminals from being criminals.
The purpose of law enforcement in California, the men and women who serve want to enforce the laws and protect public safety and do all that to serve the public. The primary purpose of law enforcement in California, though, is protecting the plantation class bourgeoisie that run this place. Gavin Newsom the other day was wildly upset to see one of his political donors who operates a cannabis farm. So his farm got raided, and there were hundreds of illegal aliens working there, including children. Well, our esteemed governor, Gavo, was more upset about the raid than he was that there were children having to work alongside sex offenders and that sort of thing.
Of course.
With the left, they don't care about black people or children or women or transvestites or Muslims or anti-Semitism or anything. It's always about power.
I 100% agree. As a matter of fact, I was going on a rant at the beginning of the show about how Gavin Newsom had just had a podcast where he said supposedly almost 60% of the farm workers and construction workers in California are illegals, and I managed to cut my own grass and clean my own house and clean my toilets and weed whack around my property just fine without illegals, that we don't need these people. And I've worked on construction sites with perfectly legal American citizens, typical corn-fed white boys, black guys, it doesn't matter, Hispanics, Mexican, who all were here legally and had no problem working on a construction site. I wonder where he's getting this poll that American citizens don't want, $20, $30 an hour construction jobs.
I think he's talking about his friends. I don't think any of Gavo's friends want to do that kind of work. I don't think any of them have ever broken a sweat. I've never seen a man like Gavin Newsom breaking track in the Gravenveer mud. I've never seen a man like Gavo unloading a deuce and a half in 122-degree desert heat. I've never seen Gavin Newsom chamber around and say, "Cover me, man, I'm going in." He's just not built that way. I don't know how to break it to your listeners. But if these hardworking Latinos are so vital to agriculture and construction, why aren't we admitting them legally? Why do they have to come illegally and be slave labor for the Ku Klux Klan class?
I completely agree. I completely agree. I'm getting the music, so it looks like we're out of time. But everybody, this is Nils Gravilius, Los Angeles-based private detective. He's had a long, star-studded career in protective services, investigation, so on and so forth out in California. Please follow his work, follow everything he does. Where can people find you?
GraveliusPI.com, and look for my book, my professional memoir, The Last Lawman, to come out in June of 26 from Post Hill Press. I'm standing by always when you need some more commentary.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure we're going to have you on. It's going to be a long, hot summer and people are getting crazy. So thank you for coming on. Again, this is your episode of Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. We went through a couple things this episode, right? We went through local government. We went through the defunding of Planned Parenthood and crazy batshit psychos in friggin' Kentucky who decided to shoot up a church, over, issues of self-aggrandizement. Thank you for tuning in. Share this with all of your friends. Tune in next week. Up next, we're going to have Granite State Live from 7 to 9 and Shadow Band from 9:30 to 10:30. Make sure to go to Ram TV Live, get all the episodes, check back with us. We're going to be live on X and all your platforms coming up next. See you next week. United We Stand, A Marine's Fight. Written by Julian Acciard. I wrote this book to decipher through the tumultuous political dialogue and political gangbanging we see on both sides of the aisle between politicians, activists, influencers, and pundits, and get down to brass tacks solutions in order to save our republic. Again, United We Stand, A Marine's Fight, written by Julian Acciard. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Nobles.